If I'm looking extra depressed today, don't worry about it. I'm just a bit drowsy because I just got my wisdom teeth out. But I still wanted to talk to you about a similarly looking drowsy animal called the Uromastyx, and I'll kind of compare them to other animals like bearded dragons, for example, and talk about whether I think they are overrated or not. The reason I mentioned this one looks a bit drowsy himself, I haven't had this one for terribly long. He just came into us from someone. I don't even remember what state he came from, but he was an animal that was rehomed to us, and Uromastyx are one that we don't see very often, especially compared to bearded dragons, which are here basically every day, and that's why I thought they'd be a good comparison lizard. But because we haven't gotten too many, this is definitely not any sort of care guide, and I'm not nearly an expert on Uromastyx. And this one probably isn't exactly the picture-perfect example of Uromastyx, but that might even add to it, because he looks just a little bit beat up, slightly lethargic, and he does have some stuff like a bit of stuck shed on his back, but I thought I'd leave all that on to talk about it and show it to you. So Uromastyx, similar to bearded dragons, are from pretty arid and dry places, but they are from even drier locations, and there are multiple subspecies of them. The family tree of Uromastyx completely confuses me, and I don't even bother trying to figure it out, but there are a few different variations, and they look pretty similar. You get the idea. They have these big, chubby cheeks on their tiny faces, on these lumpy bodies, and these spiny tails. They're also known as spiny tail lizards. They are not, like I said, as common as bearded dragons, which probably anyone could figure out because you don't see them as often. And I don't know if this is for any particular reason. I'd say their care is a lot more bizarre than other lizards, but not necessarily much more difficult. But I think it's partially just because different animals become popular at different times, and Uromastyx haven't quite had their time to shine yet. They are pretty easy to find. If you are in the United States and you want one, you can probably find one online. And the price range varies quite a lot. A lot of them are still wild caught, but they are also bred in captivity. There's debate on whether you should purchase wild-caught animals or not. If it's your only option, I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing to do, especially if you do plan on breeding them at some point and contributing to them being in captivity. First off, looking at the body, I think that there is one reason they look cooler than bearded dragons. And I already mentioned it once, and I'm probably gonna mention it 11 more times, and that is their bulbous, massive, unnaturally large cheeks. They just stick out on the sides of their head, and especially on the babies, they're super cute. This is the largest one that I've actually had come in. I think we sold one that was about a similar size to this one, but most of the ones we get are these little juvenile ones, and they look even more ridiculous because their bodies are even bigger, their heads are even smaller, and their cheeks are even more massive. And although bearded dragons have a similar shape, it just doesn't have that same cute factor. So if you want the most adorable animal possible, yeah, I'd probably get a Uromastyx over a bearded dragon, but that might not necessarily be enough reasons to get one over a bearded dragon. Their diets are pretty cool. It's almost identical to a beardy, but they actually eat seeds. I don't know why. I don't know what lizard down the line in their family started eating seeds for some reason, but it's a pretty nutritious addition to their diet. And a lot of people even use seeds as their substrate because they do like to burrow. Some people like to use loose substrate with bearded dragons so that they can burrow and dig and stuff. But in my experience, when beardies do have loose substrate, and I've set some up in bioactive enclosures, for example, they just never really take advantage of it. But Uromastyx seem to actually be more of a fan of digging and exploring, and that's why a ton of people also use sand. Personally, I don't use sand for any animals other than our axolotls, basically. I have a video about why I don't recommend using sand, but it seems like everywhere we turn, I always see people using sand with Uromastyx. And personally, we still don't sell to people who use sand, but I do think that using seeds as a substrate is a pretty creative workaround because they can still burrow, but it's edible at the same time in case they do ingest it, and they might even choose to because they can obviously eat certain types of seeds. But other dry substrates work too. I see people use aspen. We just use dry eco earth for the most part, and that's worked just fine. Dry is definitely an important word here. Something similar that people do with beardies is a lot of people don't even give their dragons water bowls or water dishes. I think the majority do. We do. It's easy enough. I recommend it. But technically a bearded dragon can live basically its entire life without access to a water bowl, as long as it has a lot of moisture in the food, and maybe you occasionally soak it. But even then, you might not even have to. Also, bearded dragons like to soak, but Uromastyx, even though they have the option to soak with us in their bowls, not once have I ever seen a Uromastyx soaking. And it's just, I think, because they naturally never really come across water in that many places. And the little amounts of water they do get are in their food and stuff. Just like every other animal, they release urates, which is basically solid pee or solid urine, and they soak up all of the moisture and use every little bit of it, so when they do expel that, it's dry and they waste no moisture. We give our Uromastyx bowls, so they have unlimited water. It's pretty crazy that we can do that. These bowls evaporate pretty quickly though, because they like very hot spots, and compared to bearded dragons, it's even hotter. A lot of breeders, I was just looking online, keep them at 110 to 120 plus degrees Fahrenheit, and that's hot. I've had people recommend the same for my Savannah monitor. In bearded dragons, people usually do about 100 degrees Fahrenheit or so. And this is the hot spot or the basking surface, meaning that if you take a heat gun and stick it on, say, their basking rock, it'll read 120. Not that the ambient air in the entire enclosure is 120 degrees, but even then, a lot of people keep it almost at 100. And one of the reasons he probably looks a bit lethargic is because it's kind of cool in this room. He's not under his heating, and he's probably just freezing, basically, because a 70-degree room is probably pretty cold to him because he's not used to that. But they can definitely withstand pretty cold temperatures, and those temperatures drop at night, so it's not like he's gonna freeze to death in this room for not being under a heat lamp for a bit. Also, I just realized I'm guessing on the sex of this Uromastyx. I have no idea how to sex them. Fun fact. Even just this Uromastyx, I think he's a bit more wrinklier than the average, say, super healthy one, but it's pretty hard to find healthy examples. They all look very different online. It's something I notice is they remind me of iguanas in the sense that they often look just very beat up and very grungy. Like if you look up, especially like wild iguanas or iguanas that are in Florida, and you find these images, they'll have like these scars and they'll have stuck shed all over them, and it just gives them like this very dinosaur-esque look. I feel like that's similar with Uromastyx. He still has some little patches from his last shed, and stuck shed on most animals can definitely cause some pretty serious issues long term. But with Uromastyx, it almost seems like they naturally are just built with that strong, tough skin, and they're less affected by it. So if Uromastyx does have stuck shed, I still definitely recommend that you take it off once it's been on for a while. It seems that affects them less because they are a lot hardier and a lot tougher, just built overall, which kind of makes sense when you think about a desert animal. I think my gums are bleeding. I'd say their second coolest aspect is their tail. I don't know any dinosaurs by name, but you know the one with like the cool tail? That's my favorite one. And it's like his tail. It's pretty cool. It's very just beefy and thick, and it's overall pretty strong, and he could probably give you a little beating with it if you wanted to. But then you just see his face again. It's like this big contrast of this big scary spiny tail, and then you've got those stupid cheeks, and they're actually squishy. I discovered this in one of my unboxing videos where I unboxed Uromastyx, and I was like, are their cheeks actually hard? Because they look hard, but no, it's squish. You can actually squeeze their cheeks. I probably wouldn't recommend squeezing them too hard, but it is technically an option if you purchase a Uromastyx. Again, it is probably going to be harder to find the perfect Uromastyx if you are looking for one because they are less common and a lot of them are wild caught, meaning there's a high likelihood of parasites and stuff that could affect the Uromastyx. You just don't know as much about it if it was just shipped in from another country compared to if it was born as a baby in captivity and you know who was caring for it from the moment that it hatched. Still, I don't think that should necessarily persuade you from getting one. When I was a kid, what I would do when I wanted a new animal is I would basically make a list of every animal that I wanted. And at one point, I think the list was Uromastyx, bearded dragon, blue-tongued skink, chameleon. And I would write all the pros and cons out of each one, and I ultimately got a blue-tongued skink in 2014. But the Uromastyx, I think, was second on the list. The reason it didn't make the top is for no particular reason. They just didn't stand out quite enough to me. And they, other than their chubby cheeks, they feel a little bit generic to me. So I don't think they're necessarily underrated because I don't think people are necessarily missing out on a ton by not having one. At the same time, I don't think they're overrated because not many people even talk about them to begin with. If they had the popularity of a bearded dragon, I would 100% think that they are overrated. Right now, I think they fit in pretty well. Some specialist people keep them. The average keeper has probably heard of them or seen one, but not necessarily thought about keeping one. Then there's those that are really enthusiastic and excited about them. We had one that came in and it actually shot salt out of its nose. It was all built up and crusty around the nose because when they have too much in their system, their body is able to just expel it out their nostrils. And I thought that was kind of cool. Hasn't done it since because we made sure that he doesn't get too much sodium after that. Handling wise, I don't get as much enjoyment out of holding them. There's a couple we've had that are just super skittish and they jump all over the place, and personally, I don't think that's that fun. Sometimes it is fun to handle like crazy Savannah monitors or other lizards, but a crazy Uromastyx is just like you can't even keep up with it. They're so quick. And they can definitely just scoot away from you at any moment. This one, on the other hand, is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, where he doesn't care at all. You can just do whatever you want to him. I won't like beat him up too much, at least on camera, because it's probably some form of animal abuse, but you get the idea. He's just so calm that it's like, well, there's a lizard in my hand. I don't know what to do with it. He just...
Agony is my way of life. Pain is all I know.
He just sits there, and that's why I think he is the perfect one for this video, because we're both just so low energy, and he doesn't care about anything. Even when they're basking, I've seen like super healthy looking Uromastyx just basking, and they just look kind of sad. They look cute, chubby, and sad, just all at once, just sitting there under the warmth, questioning the meaning of life. Probably not. They're probably just thinking about all those seeds that they overdosed on the night before. But I don't know, they kind of just exist. It's just a lizard. What else is there? I don't think there's much to hype up about them, but I don't think there's much to make fun of about them. But I did want to talk about the Uromastyx lizard and compare them to others. So are they cooler than bearded dragons? Kinda, yeah. I'm gonna say yes, because of the cheeks. That's the only reason, the sole reason. Should you get one over a bearded dragon? If you like them more, sure, why not? Just make sure you research them and be aware that it seems like there's a bit more controversy in the Uromastyx community just because of things like their temperature and their husbandry and their exact diet, because there's just a lot of variation with that. And because they're kept less often, you might have more trouble finding super credible sources for that information. If I had to pick between a bearded dragon and a Uromastyx, right now, I'd get neither. I'm good. But if I were forced to pick one for myself, I think I would still go with a bearded dragon. Of course I'd go with Stan, but even if it wasn't Stan, bearded dragons do have that extra level of personal ability. I feel like there's more you can do with a beardy. Like you can almost play with a bearded dragon more, like messing around with food, throwing stuff, but not throwing stuff at it, but throwing food at it, and like the beardy chasing it and coming back and maybe recognizing the owners more. And I could be wrong. Maybe if there's any Uromastyx owners out there that have spiny tails that are similar to that, then definitely let me know. But in my experience, they seem more less aware, like a leopard gecko almost, where they definitely look at what's going on and they pay attention, but they're just less interactive. So I think Uromastyx are where they belong, basically, is my point. They should just keep their place. If you want one, check it out, get it. Just be aware that they are very hardy, which also means that you can abuse them more, basically. And I don't mean that you should abuse them more, but say you have a very sensitive animal, like the first one that comes to mind is a tree python. Super sensitive species. If you do something wrong, they'll likely die pretty quickly, meaning that you can't really neglect it for very long without it dying. But Uromastyx is one that's probably could undergo a lot more neglect, meaning that it'll suffer for longer, and you may not actually notice that it's having issues. Don't let that sway you. Do your research, check him out. What do you think of him? This is the Uromastyx, who hasn't moved the entire video, but I swear, he is alive. On the outside, at least.
I was still here.
You can check out the description for some cool stuff. I'm losing my voice. My throat kind of hurts, so thanks for all the nice messages I got, and I'll slowly get back into making videos as I start feeling better. I'll go clean up my gums and eat some applesauce. Until the next video, I'm Alex. Thanks for watching.